If there's one thing Kody Brown has proven over and over again, it's that he has an absolutely uncanny ability to make bad situations worse. And honestly, at this point, it's almost impressive. The man went on special forces to redeem himself, to show the world he's tough and accountable and not the total disaster his ex-wives have been painting him as. Instead, he became the guy who stank so badly that his own castmates had to stage an intervention. And now, in a series of post-finale interviews, Kody decided it was time to explain himself. He wanted to clear the air, pun absolutely intended, about why he smelled like a dumpster fire in the desert heat. But here's the thing, his explanation didn't make anything better. In fact, it made everything so much worse that the internet is having an absolute field day with it. Kody sat down and admitted on camera that he didn't bring deodorant to special forces. He didn't think they'd be able to shower. He didn't prioritize basic hygiene because apparently in Kody's mind, foot care was more important than not subjecting everyone around him to the smell of rotting ambition and failure. And even when he finally borrowed deodorant from Andrew East, an actual man's man who took pity on this walking biohazard, it didn't help. Kody still reeked, he said it himself. The deodorant did nothing. And you know what? That tracks. Because this isn't just about hygiene. This is about Kody's entire approach to life. When things get hard, when the pressure is on, Kody shuts down. He stops trying, he stops caring, and everyone around him suffers for it. The hygiene scandal isn't just a funny little side story from Special Forces. It's a perfect microcosm of everything wrong with Kody Brown. This is a man who has spent years blaming his ex-wives and his children for the collapse of his family, refusing to take real accountability, insisting that relationships require two people so it's not all on him. And now here he is, on national television, admitting that he couldn't even be bothered to pack deodorant because he just assumed things would be too hard. He didn't prepare, he didn't think ahead, and when reality smacked him in the face, he made it everyone else's problem. Sound familiar? Because that's exactly what he's done to Christine, Janelle, Mary, and all 18 of his kids. What makes this whole thing even more delicious is that Kody is contractually obligated to promote this show. He has to sit in interview after interview, reliving the moment Brianna Chicken Fry told him he stank, reliving the moment a female interrogator called him creepy while dumping literal toilet water on his head, and now reliving his own pathetic explanation for why he was too clueless to bring deodorant. The man is out here doing a press tour for his own humiliation, and honestly, it's the kind of poetic justice that makes you believe in karma. Let's talk about the actual interview moment where Kody tried to explain away the hygiene disaster because it's genuinely one of the most unintentionally hilarious things he's ever said. And that's saying something because this is the same man who once compared his hair to a lion's mane and thought that was a flex. So Kody's sitting there talking about special forces, and the interviewer brings up the hygiene issue. You can tell Kody thinks he's about to drop some totally reasonable explanation that's going to make everyone go, oh, okay, that makes sense, except it doesn't make sense. Not even a little bit. Kody admits he went into Special Forces having watched other seasons of the show, but somehow convinced himself they wouldn't be allowed to shower. So instead of packing deodorant like a normal human being, he packed supplements and focused on foot care. Foot care. Let that sink in for a second. Kody was more concerned about his feet than about the fact that he'd be living in close quarters with other people in scorching heat while doing physically demanding challenges. He genuinely thought, you know what? I'll just raw dog this whole hygiene thing and see what happens. And what happened was he became the smelly guy that everyone complained about. But here's where it gets even better. Kody says that when they were finally allowed to shower, he didn't want to because he was exhausted and he didn't want to risk getting called out by the drill sergeants or having to get smoked. So he just didn't shower for days. And Brianna Chicken Fry, bless her heart, finally had to tell him straight up that he stank. Like, she didn't dance around it, she didn't try to be polite, she just said, Kody, you smell bad, and you need to do something about it. And only then did Kody decide maybe he should take a shower. So he showers and he realizes he doesn't have deodorant because, again, he didn't think to pack any. And Andrew East, who is apparently a saint, lets Kody borrow his deodorant. And you'd think that would solve the problem, right? Wrong. Because Kody admits on camera that even after using Andrew's deodorant, he still smelled. It didn't help. He still reeked. And the way he says it is so matter-of-fact, like he's just resigned to the fact that he's a lost cause when it comes to basic personal hygiene. What's wild is that Kody seems to think this explanation makes him look better. Like he genuinely believes that admitting he didn't prepare and then half trying to fix it somehow absolves him of being the guy who subjected everyone to his stench. But all it does is confirm what we already knew. Kody doesn't think ahead. He doesn't consider how his actions affect other people. And when things go wrong, his solutions are always too little, too late. He borrowed deodorant after days of stinking up the place, and it didn't even work. That's the Kody Brown experience in a nutshell. Now let's rewind to the actual moment on Special Forces when Brianna had to confront Kody about his smell, because the context makes his lame excuses even more pathetic. This wasn't just a casual, hey buddy, maybe freshen up a bit situation. This was Brianna, who had been dealing with grueling physical challenges in extreme heat, finally reaching her breaking point because Kody's body odor was so bad it became impossible to ignore. She straight up told him he stank. And Kody's response was to apologize and admit he hadn't been showering. Like, that's a normal thing to just casually not do when you're living and working in close proximity to other human beings. But the hygiene issue wasn't just about the smell, it became a symbol of everything that was wrong with Kody on that show. He was the guy who annoyed everyone with his over-the-top enthusiasm and his creepy, intense stares. He was the guy who shut down during the final challenge and left his teammates hanging. And he was also the guy who couldn't be bothered to maintain basic personal hygiene. All of those things added up to paint a picture of someone who is fundamentally disconnected from how his behavior affects the people around him. And that female interrogator calling him creepy while pouring toilet water on his head, that was the universe delivering exactly what Kody deserved. Think about the optics of that moment. A woman in a position of authority looked at Kody Brown and decided the most fitting punishment for him was to literally douse him in filth while calling him creepy. And honestly, it was perfect, because Kody had spent the entire competition being oblivious to how uncomfortable he was making everyone. He didn't pick up on the social cues, he didn't notice people backing away from him, both literally because of the smell and figuratively because of his energy. And when that interrogator called him creepy, she was saying out loud what everyone else had been thinking the entire time. Kody tried to laugh it off in interviews, joking about his hair and saying maybe she was just trying to protect herself by claiming she didn't know him. But here's the thing, she wasn't protecting herself. She was being honest. Kody is creepy. Not in a dangerous way, but in that deeply uncomfortable way where someone has zero self-awareness and keeps pushing into your space even when you clearly want them to back off. The kind of creepy where you can't quite put your finger on what's wrong, but you know something is off, and the smell just made it 10 times worse. What's devastating is that Kody still doesn't get it. He talks about the experience like it was all just a misunderstanding, like he was trying his best and people just didn't appreciate his optimism. But the reality is that his best wasn't good enough. His best included not showering, not bringing deodorant, and then being shocked when people called him out for it. That's not optimism, that's delusion, and it's the same delusion that's destroyed his relationships with his wives and his kids. Here's what really gets me about Kody's excuse, that he didn't think they'd be able to shower. Every single other person on that show managed to figure out basic hygiene. Brianna showered, Gia washed her face, which apparently surprised Kody so much he had to comment on it in interviews. Sean Johnson East showered, Andrew East showered, and had deodorant to spare for Kody's stinky behind. Literally everyone else on Special Forces understood that even in extreme conditions, you still need to take care of yourself. But somehow Kody convinced himself that hygiene just wouldn't be possible, so why even try? And let's be real, Kody claims he watched previous seasons of Special Forces before going on the show, so he saw other recruits managing their hygiene, he saw people showering when they had the opportunity, he had all the information he needed to pack appropriately and prepare himself, but instead he chose to focus on supplements and foot care, as if blisters were going to be his biggest problem and not the fact that he'd be sweating through 18-hour days in the desert with no deodorant. It's the kind of backwards priorities that make you wonder how this man has survived this long without someone just wrapping him in bubble wrap and keeping him away from decision-making entirely. The foot care thing is especially ridiculous when you consider that Kody pulled his hamstring on day 3 and just powered through it. He tore his hamstring, had a giant purple bruise behind his knee, and still kept up with professional athletes during the physical challenges. So clearly, Kody is capable of pushing through pain and discomfort when he wants to. But basic hygiene? Nah, that's asking too much. He'll run on a torn hamstring, but he won't take 3 minutes to put on deodorant or shower before bed. Make it make sense. What this really reveals is a pattern we've seen from Kody over and over again. He doesn't prepare for reality, he prepares for some fantasy version of events that exists only in his head, and then when reality doesn't match up, he acts like he's the victim of circumstances beyond his control. He didn't think they'd shower, so he didn't bring deodorant, and now everyone's mad at him for stinking. He didn't think his wives would actually leave him, so he didn't work on his relationships, and now everyone's mad at him for being a terrible husband. He didn't think his kids would hold grudges, so he didn't prioritize them, and now everyone's mad at him for being an absent father. See the pattern? Kody lives in a world where consequences don't apply to him until they smack him in the face, and even then, he doesn't take responsibility. He just makes excuses about how he didn't see it coming, how he was doing his best, how everyone else should have been more understanding. But at a certain point, ignorance stops being an excuse, and when you're a grown man who can't figure out that you need deodorant for a physically demanding reality show, that's not ignorance, that's willful incompetence. Now let's connect the dots between Kody's hygiene disaster on Special Forces and what we already know about how he behaves when he's stressed. Because this isn't new information. Robin herself has talked about how miserable Kody gets when he's under pressure. She's mentioned how he shuts down, how he becomes impossible to be around, how the stress just consumes him and he stops functioning like a normal person. And what did we see on Special Forces? Exactly that. Kody under stress, shutting down, making everyone around him miserable, and literally forgetting how to take care of himself. The parallels are honestly stunning. At home, when things get hard, Kody retreats. He stops showing up for his kids, he stops communicating with his wives, he holes up with Robin and makes his stress everyone else's problem. And on Special Forces, when things got hard, Kody stopped showering, he stopped talking during the final challenge. He shut down so completely that the drill sergeants had to eliminate him because he was useless to his team. It's the exact same pattern, just playing out in a different environment. And Robin, who's been living with this version of Kody for years, had to watch it all unfold on national television. Can you imagine being Robin and seeing your husband on TV having other women tell him he smells bad? Watching him admit he didn't bring deodorant because he just didn't think ahead? Seeing him get called creepy by a female interrogator while covered in toilet water? That's humiliating. And not just for Kody, but for Robin too, because she's tied her entire identity to being Kody's wife, to being the one he chose, the one he stayed with. And now the whole world is watching him fall apart on reality television, proving everything his ex-wives have been saying about him. Robin has worked so hard to maintain this image of Kody as a strong patriarch, as someone worthy of respect and devotion. She's defended him through every scandal, every divorce, every public dragging, but how is she supposed to defend this? How is she supposed to spin the fact that her husband was too incompetent to pack deodorant? That even when he borrowed some, it didn't help because he was just that far gone. There's no way to make that look good. There's no narrative where Kody comes out of this looking like anything other than a mess. And here's the kicker. This is who Kody is when he's trying. This is him at his best, attempting to prove himself on a show designed to test physical and mental toughness. And he couldn't even handle basic hygiene. So what does that say about his ability to handle the everyday stresses of family life? What does that say about his capacity to show up for Robin when things get hard? Because if Kody falls apart this badly under the pressure of a reality competition, what's going to happen when real life throws him a curveball? Robin's watching all of this, and she has to be wondering if she hitched her wagon to a man who's fundamentally incapable of functioning under pressure. While Kody was busy explaining why he couldn't manage deodorant, he was also doing damage control on an even bigger disaster. His press tour for Special Forces has been an absolute train wreck, and not just because of the hygiene revelations. Kody has spent interview after interview walking back every single moment of accountability he showed during his emotional breakdown on the show. Remember when he cried in the mirror room and admitted he should have had stronger relationships with his kids? Remember when it seemed like maybe, just maybe, Kody was finally getting it? Well, forget all that, because in his Fox 5 interview, Kody made it crystal clear that he's learned absolutely nothing. Mykelti and Tony watched that Fox 5 interview on their Patreon, and they were devastated. Mykelti had actually been moved by her dad's breakdown on Special Forces. She'd seen him take accountability, seen him admit fault, and it made her want to reach out. It gave her hope that maybe her father was finally capable of change. And then she watched him on Fox 5 looking like a completely different person with his bizarre new haircut, telling the interviewer that he's only partly to blame for his broken relationships with his kids, that the divorces made the kids pick sides, that it's not really his fault because the kids were closer to their mothers anyway. Mykelti said multiple times during her reaction that what Kody was saying wasn't true. She pointed out that his relationships with his kids started deteriorating long before the divorces happened. And that makes sense because we've heard the same thing from other Brown children. Kody's failures as a father aren't some recent development caused by his marriages falling apart. They're long-standing patterns of neglect and favoritism that have been building for years. But Kody's rewriting history now, painting himself as a victim of circumstances beyond his control, and his kids are watching him do it in real time. The timing of all this couldn't be worse. Kody's out here trying to rehab his image, trying to get people to feel sorry for him, and instead, he's just confirming everything everyone already suspected. He doesn't actually want to take accountability, he wants the appearance of accountability without having to do any of the actual work. He wants credit for crying on camera and saying he could have done better, but he doesn't want to follow through with real change or honest self-reflection. And his kids see right through it. What's especially cruel is that Mykelti got her hopes up. She saw a glimmer of the father she wished she had, and then watched that glimmer get snuffed out in a Fox 5 interview interview where Kody debuted a terrible haircut and blamed his ex-wives for his failures. That's devastating, and it's exactly the kind of thing that cements estrangement, because it's one thing to have a parent who's never tried. It's another thing entirely to have a parent who pretends to try, who gives you just enough hope to lower your guard, and then immediately proves they haven't changed at all. That's the kind of betrayal that makes you stop trying altogether. Let's dive into the specific nonsense Kody spouted in that Fox 5 interview, because the mental gymnastics are truly Olympic level. Kody sits there and tells the interviewer that he took full responsibility during Special Forces because that's the military way. If you're partly culpable, you're fully culpable. So he went into it saying, yeah, I was the problem, I made the mistakes. He frames this like it's some noble sacrifice, like he's falling on his sword for the greater good. But then in the very next breath, he says that in reality, the blame should be shared with his ex-wives. Do you see what he just did there? He claimed to take full responsibility while simultaneously refusing to actually take full responsibility. He wants credit for being accountable without having to own any of the actual accountability. It's the classic Kody Brown special. Yes, I messed up, but actually everyone else messed up too, so really when you think about it, I'm not that bad. It's infuriating to watch because he genuinely seems to believe this makes sense. He thinks he's threading some kind of logical needle when really he's just exposing himself as someone incapable of honest self-reflection. And the excuse he gives for why his relationships with his kids fell apart is equally ridiculous. He says all his children had great relationships with him until the divorces happened. Then the kids had to pick sides, and because of polygamy, they were naturally closer to their mothers, so they just drifted away from him. As if 18 children all independently decided to choose their mothers over him for no reason other than proximity. As if Kody's own behavior had nothing to do with it. As if years of favoritism and neglect and broken promises just don't count because the divorces happened later. Kelty already debunked this narrative. She said point blank that Kody's relationships with his kids were deteriorating before the divorces. And that tracks with everything we've seen on Sister Wives over the years. We've watched Kody prioritize Robin's kids over everyone else. We've seen him cancel plans, break promises, and fail to show up for his other children while bending over backwards for whatever Robin and her kids needed. The divorces didn't create these problems, they just made it acceptable for the kids to finally stop pretending everything was fine. But Kody can't admit that, because admitting that would require him to look at his own behavior and acknowledge that he made choices that hurt his children. It would require him to sit with the uncomfortable reality that he chose one wife and her kids over everyone else, and that his other children noticed and responded accordingly. So instead, he blames the divorces. He blames the kids for being closer to their mothers. He blames polygamy itself for creating an impossible situation. He blames everything and everyone except himself. And in doing so, he proves exactly why his kids don't want anything to do with him. Because you can't repair a relationship with someone who refuses to acknowledge how they broke it in the first place. The most satisfying moment in all of Kody's recent press came from Natalie on Nick Viall's podcast because she absolutely destroyed his entire framework for avoiding responsibility. Kody was doing his usual song and dance about how relationships require two people, how he's reaching out but his kids aren't responding, how he can't force them to engage with him, and Natalie just cut through all of it with one simple truth. It's not your children's job to maintain the relationship. It's your job as the father. Kody tried to push back, insisting that he is reaching out. That's his whole point, but Natalie wasn't having it. She spoke from personal experience about having a strained relationship with her own father, and she made it clear that the burden is on the parent, not the child. And you could see Kody getting defensive, trying to justify why sometimes he puts his effort where it's effective, meaning with the 5 kids who still talk to him, instead of continuing to reach out to the ones who've gone silent. That admission right there tells you everything you need to know about Kody's priorities. He's not actually interested in repairing all of his relationships. He's interested in maintaining the relationships that are easy and make him feel good. The kids who still engage with him, who haven't demanded real accountability, those are the ones who get his time and energy, but the kids who are hurt, who need him to do the hard work of earning their trust back, those kids get periodic reach outs, and then Kody throws his hands up and says, well, I tried, but it takes 2 people. It's the exact same pattern we saw with the deodorant situation. Kody will do the bare minimum, and when that bare minimum doesn't solve the problem, he acts like he's done all he can. He borrowed deodorant and he still smelled. So what else was he supposed to do? He reaches out to his kids and they don't immediately forgive him, so what else is he supposed to do? The answer, obviously, is to do more, to actually put in sustained effort, to show up consistently even when it's uncomfortable. But Kody doesn't operate that way. He wants quick fixes and easy solutions, and when those don't materialize, he gives up. And just like with the hygiene issue, Kody doesn't seem to understand that his half-efforts are actually making things worse. Borrowing deodorant after days of stinking didn't redeem him. It just highlighted how little he'd been trying before. Reaching out to his kids once in a while and then complaining that they don't respond fast enough doesn't repair the relationship. It just reminds them that he's still more interested in being seen as a good father than actually doing the work of being one. Natalie called him out on that, and you could tell it hit a nerve. Because deep down, Kody knows she's right. He just doesn't want to admit it, because admitting it would require him to actually change. So where does all of this leave Kody now that the Special Forces finale has aired and his press tour has been a complete disaster? Well, if the goal was to rehabilitate his image and prove to his kids that he's changed, mission absolutely failed. If anything, he's made things worse. He's shown his estranged children that the emotional breakthrough they witnessed on the show was temporary at best, performative at worst. He's reminded Robin and his remaining kids that when the pressure is on, he falls apart. And he's given the entire world a masterclass in how not to take accountability for your failures. The hygiene scandal alone would have been embarrassing enough. But combined with his backtracking on responsibility, his blame shifting in interviews, and his refusal to do the actual work of repairing his relationships, it paints a picture of a man who is fundamentally stuck. Kody keeps talking about wanting quality over quantity in his relationships now, about how he's learned from his mistakes, but his actions tell a completely different story. His actions say he wants the benefits of reconciliation without having to put in any real effort. He wants his kids to forgive him without having to earn that forgiveness. And Robin's watching all of this unfold. She's seeing her husband humiliate himself on national television. She's hearing him admit he didn't bring deodorant, that he shut down during challenges, that he's still blaming his ex-wives for problems he created. And while Robin has stood by Kody through thick and thin, there's only so much public embarrassment a person can take. Word on the street is that Robin's patience is wearing thin. That the ick she's developed watching Kody fail on Special Forces is very real and very hard to ignore. Sources close to the situation suggest Robin's already been planning her exit strategy for a while now. She's watched 3 other women leave Kody and come out the other side, happier and more fulfilled. She's seen how Christine is thriving with David, how Janelle's living her best life, how even Mary seems lighter without the weight of trying to make Kody love her. And Robin's smart enough to know that she could have that too. She could leave, take whatever assets she's managed to squirrel away, and start fresh without having to manage Kody's constant crises. The hygiene situation might seem like a small thing in the grand scheme of Kody's failures, but it's symbolic. It represents everything Robin's been dealing with behind closed doors. The lack of preparation, the defensiveness when confronted, the inability to handle stress without completely falling apart, the excuses that never quite add up. If Kody can't manage basic personal hygiene on a reality show where cameras are watching his every move, how is he managing the private moments? How is he showing up for Robin when she needs him? And more importantly, how long is Robin willing to keep covering for a man who keeps proving he's incapable of being the partner she thought she married? Here's the devastating irony of Kody Brown's entire Special Forces experience. He went on that show to prove something. He wanted to show the world, and maybe more importantly show himself, that he still had it. That he was tough, masculine, capable of handling whatever got thrown at him. He wanted to redeem himself after years of being dragged by his ex-wives and painted as a failure. He thought Special Forces would be his comeback moment, his chance to rewrite the narrative and emerge as someone worthy of respect. Instead, he became the guy who forgot to bring deodorant. The guy who got called creepy while being doused in toilet water. The guy who shut down during the final challenge and had to be eliminated because he was useless to his team. The guy who admitted in interviews that even after borrowing deodorant, he still reeked. That's Kody's legacy from Special Forces. Not toughness, not redemption. Just a series of humiliating moments that confirmed everything people already thought about him. And the worst part is, Kody still doesn't get it. He's out here doing interviews, trying to explain himself, trying to justify his failures, trying to make people understand that he was doing his best. But his best included not showering for days. His best included zero preparation for obvious challenges. His best included shutting down when his team needed him most. If that's Kody Brown at his best, what does his worst look like? And more importantly, if he can't handle the pressure of a reality competition with a clear end date and defined challenges, how is he supposed to handle the ongoing pressure of repairing relationships with his children? The answer is he can't. And deep down, Kody knows it. That's why he keeps making excuses. That's why he keeps blaming other people. That's why he walks back every moment of accountability as soon as the cameras stop rolling. Because actually doing the work, actually showing up consistently, actually prioritizing other people's needs over his own comfort, that's harder than anything he faced on Special Forces. And if he couldn't bring himself to shower when it mattered, what else is he incapable of when things get hard? Robin's already figured out the answer to that question. She's living it every day, and the clock is ticking on how much longer she's willing to tolerate being married to a man whose defining characteristic is his ability to fail spectacularly while insisting he's doing his best. The Hygiene scandal is just the latest example, but it won't be the last because Kody doesn't learn, he doesn't change, he just finds new and creative ways to prove that he's exactly who everyone said he was all along. So here's the question. If Kody can't manage deodorant under pressure, what happens when Robin finally decides she's had enough? What happens when his remaining kids realize he's never going to give them what they need? What happens when there's nobody left to make excuses for him? Drop your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you won't want to miss what's coming next.